Well, despite all the odds, we have managed to raise just over $50 million, but it has been grueling, soul-destroying, exhausting experience that I'm still honestly quite traumatized by.
Last year, Nash claimed that we had cause for quiet celebration. After years of tracking data, we thought that gender parity in the technology industry could be achieved in just 50 years' time. Earlier this year, in Paris, I stood up on stage at the annual Women in Tech Global Summit and I repeated that stat. It was mocked. According to the World Economic Forum, it's actually going to take 131 years to achieve gender parity in our industry. Look, neither stat is good, but since the pandemic, painstakingly slow progress has actually stalled. So how do we break the glass ceiling? One way is through funding female-led businesses. I wanted to understand why and asked what can be done to reverse the trend of falling investment. I decided to talk to those people who both hold the purse strings and those trying to open them. This is a beautiful, airy, calming space.
Thank you. Welcome to Spoke HQ. We chose it specifically because it had so much light and it felt kind of, it has that wellness angle to it, which we think is important. But it's quite unique to find a space that has this and a basement that you can turn into a music studio.
Are we able to have a look?
Yeah, let's go.
Hey guys,
Hi.
Well, welcome to our studio.
Yeah.
So when we moved in, we actually got the space because of this space downstairs. So we turned it into our studio ourselves so that we just had a hub to create all of our music and a home for our artists.
And you guys, obviously, artists.
Correct, yeah.
Producing, what's everyone doing?
It's a bit of a mishmash at the moment. So
Yeah.
I'm a vocalist more than anything, a rapper, spoken word. And then I'm working with Joel Baker here today, who we're doing a few sleep sessions. And we got Laylu here as well, who's done loads of stuff with Spoke. Loads. Yeah, she's probably done more than I have to a degree.
I just dived in with a bit of everything and come in when they need me.
Yeah.
Spoke, we are an award-winning mental wellness app. We have pioneered a new category of audio wellness content. So we create our own music that's driven by some of the UK's best lyricists, producers, singers, songwriters, rappers, spoken word artists, and they're trained by a team of neuroscientists to bake proven mental health tools into all the music we create. So everything from CBT to mindfulness to positive psychology and a lot more. So firstly, we create content, and secondly, it's all delivered through a deeply personalised app that gets to know you, and we help with everything from heartbreak to sleep to focus to building confidence, the kind of themes that are most relevant to today's generation.
We're here to talk about the difficulties of fundraising as a female founder. You're part of the co-founding team.
Yeah.
3 co-founders.
Yeah, I founded the company.
Right.
Michael's my co-founder, so he brings the technical side. So between us, we are the kind of perfect balance of vision and technical operations product. Lemsey's in the founding team. He's our lead artist.
Right.
He's very much an artist in his own right.
In terms of getting in the room in that pre-seed round, how difficult was that, or easy?
The very early stage, so this kind of pre-seed stage, I would say on average we've probably found it quite easy. And the reason I say that is because we're an impact startup and we're very heavy on the impact. It's very clear how impactful we are. I actually think potentially with the market and how things are at the moment and a real shining a light on female founders, it's probably been a benefit to be a female founder at this early stage. But I'm also it feels like there's a bit of a triangle, sort of if you imagine like at the top, which is like, startups that make it to Series B, C and plus, it's very clear that that's mostly all male founded teams.
What are the concerns of those people in those groups? What do you share with each other that makes you kind of go, right, we're facing a bit of a, not a struggle necessarily, but it's a big task ahead?
Yeah, so I guess maybe one thing is actually a friend of mine called Annika. She founded a really cool platform called Peekaboo, and she mentioned not too long ago that really it's quite scary going out into an investment round or going out to seek investment in general is very high stress. It's really scary, and it's actually because it's, you know, like this. Okay, so imagine like dating. You're kind of out dating, you know, you're meeting loads of people. Most people doesn't work out with. Maybe quite a few people don't make you feel that good about yourself. You get ghosted a whole load of times. And that whole process,
Bad dating, by the way, then.
Bad dating, but yeah, but at the same time, like still dating, you're going to meet a lot of people, and it's just sometimes the chemistry is just not there, and it's, you know, you're lucky if all you've met is really, really lovely, great people. That's the honest truth, and you know, you get ghosted a lot. So investors ghost a lot.
You gotta do what you gotta do. You gotta go. You gotta do what you gotta do. You gotta go.
One of the stereotypes that is often told is that it is harder for women to get investment meetings, and the co-founding teams, when they are in the room, they feel that the investors talk to the male co-founder. Is that your experience?
One thing I can tell you is that I analysed the investment that came in throughout our pre-seed, and on average, and bearing in mind it's not like we've got that many investors, so this is definitely not statistically significant, but I did notice that meetings that we would both go to together, we were more likely to get the investment through.
Do you feel that the types of questions Michael is asked versus the types of questions you are asked are different?
Yeah, I think so, definitely. I definitely think, you know, we're asked slightly different questions. And actually, I can give you an example where we weren't invested in. There was a fund that didn't invest in us, and they said that, because they asked us both lots of questions, but they said it was because I couldn't answer certain questions that were actually in Michael's job role. So they were questions around various parts of our model and how it worked, and quite kind of intricate stuff based on it's his role. That's you know, we work together as a team. We both know what we don't know, and we both lean on each other, and that's what makes us a really good team. Yeah. But they specifically said that because I couldn't answer some of the questions, that they were questions that Michael should be answering because it's his specialty. That's why they didn't invest. And that's probably one of the examples where I can tell you I was really, really, really upset by that.
Imagine having all of the answers already. What's the point of tomorrow? The fact that you don't know means that there's time for you to learn, time for you to grow, and it also means you have the opportunity to change it into whatever you truly want it to become. Use this day.
Ariana admits to being scared about her next raise, and it's understandable. Early money is drying up and the system is rigged. Venture capitalists pose different types of questions to male and female entrepreneurs. They tend to ask men questions about the potential for gains, whilst they ask women about the potential for losses. It's promotion versus protection. Whether the bias is conscious or unconscious, non-representative VC teams are overwhelmingly backing non-representative founders. But it's worse than that. Worryingly, there's evidence of bias with both male and female VCs. Naturally, we thought the problem would improve as more women became VCs, but the Harvard Business Review suggests otherwise. Between now and 2014, the number of female VCs has risen from 3% to 7% in the US, but the funding gap has just got bigger. To understand what's going on, I went to meet a leader in early stage investment here in London.
What we've tried to do is to think about the way that people interact with us before they invest as a system with lots of stages in it that hopefully have checks and balances to that. So it's not just based on like one meeting with us. You know, we've got people have a written application in which they can shine or not in one way or another. They will probably meet us before they do that. There's lots of different ways that they interact with us over time, and they will meet lots of different people from our team and from our network and so on. So we've tried to shield against, you know, bias coming up in any one particular situation that would influence our investment decision.
It feels unnecessarily unkind to perhaps point the finger at individual firms if that's the case. So what else could help? I mean, what could government or what could bodies working with government try and do to create an environment where some of those pressures are eased and we do see better results at latter stages?
I think the thing that everybody could do is put more pressure on getting the actual real statistics out there. So I would certainly encourage founders to ask firms that they're talking to about investment for their diversity and inclusion statistics. Some of them will have never been asked that before, but if you're being asked that by founders, it's genuine. That's genuinely like, oh, hang on, that's something we need to have. We need to work that out. Certainly, what generally known as the LPs, the limited partners in funds, so the people who invest in the funds themselves, already starting to see more of them ask for diversity and inclusion statistics. But I want to see more of that. I want to see like them routinely asking as part of their decision-making process as to which funds they invest in, like saying, okay, show us your diversity statistics, both of your team and of your portfolio.
What's driving that new level of interest from those individuals?
So I think it's that they're under pressure from some of their stakeholders as well. So, you know, some of the investors in venture capital they're public companies themselves. So they want to report on like the diversity themselves. Others, it's actually, there's a bit of a transfer of wealth going on between family offices, which are basically, you know, the wealth of very wealthy people, where it's the wealth is moving down a generation, and the generation below cares more about this stuff potentially than the generation that came before them. So that's putting pressure on firms that way as well. And it's not across the board yet, but I'd like to see it, you know, just routinely part of the decision-making process, that they ask for those statistics.
Look, this is a hugely complicated picture with a lot of moving parts. That's been clear throughout the course of this conversation. And I know it's really hard to boil it down to one or two actionable things that we can kind of try and take away. But there would seem to be a direction of consensus that more scrutiny, more openness and transparency around data could lead to some kind of actionable outcome. I don't know whether you'd agree with that, but what would you say could be one or two things that could change and positively change the outcome for female founders? Yes,
I agree that data is a really big part of it. We're doing this, basically we know it's bad. We don't know exactly how bad, if we're honest, in terms of the data at the moment. So it'd be much better to have stronger data and also to have data at the firm level so we can compare and contrast different firms and what's their performance on this. And actually one thing that, you know, venture capitalists are a really competitive bunch. And if you start to get that data out, they'll start to try and outcompete each other a little bit on this, I think. And that would be a very good thing.
Of course, individual people and firms can only do so much to move the needle. Early stage VC investment is one part of the puzzle that includes both angel investment and funds backing founders at Series C and D stage. The regulatory environment will play a huge part in driving change. We know that a dynamic venture capital sector can be the engine room for economic modernisation and growth. Venture capital tax reliefs here in the UK are a key draw for investors. With 2 forms of tax relief expiring in 2025, it's welcome news that the UK government has signalled that both will be extended, but we don't know when or for how long. The Treasury Committee recently released a paper highlighting the importance of these schemes and their potential to tackle shortcomings surrounding diversity. But continued uncertainty is a risk to investment and harms our ability to help more female-led businesses. Lovely to meet you. How are you? Erica Brodnock is co-founder of Extend Ventures, a firm committed to reducing bias in the early stage and venture capital investment markets. She's been recognised by Sifted as one of just 5 female and multicultural founders to watch in 2023.
We are a not-for-profit community interest company, so we tend to try not to be political, but we
Not
do.
party political.
But yeah, exactly. But we do comment on what's going on in the state of tech. Yes.
So I just wanted to ask you, because it was brought to my attention about the Treasury Committee report recently, highlighting the renewing of the Enterprise Investment Scheme.
Yes.
And the venture capital trusts.
Yeah.
And it stated that supporting greater diversity should also be conditional to receiving that taxpayer relief. Does that go far enough?
I think that it's definitely a step in the right direction. I think that setting targets and actually providing benefits for investing in diversity is a step that needs to be taken. I also think that we might need to think about how else we can bolster those steps by ensuring that people do or they lose.
Despite the overarching narrative then of needing to support more female founders, you say the trend is obviously going in the opposite direction. Why, on a personal level, why do you think that's the case?
The people that hold the purse strings at the moment aren't being educated. I think that all of the education is directed at the people that are affected by the situation. What I think actually needs to happen now is that we turn around and say, you have the doers, you have the done to. Let's leave the done to alone for a while and start to look at the doers. What education do they need so that they understand that investing in females is no longer an option, it's a must.
At the beginning of this interview, or towards the beginning of the interview, you said if we help the most marginalised, we improve the world for everyone. In the last few weeks, there's been a story brewing in the US that a lawsuit is being brought against Fearless Fund by the so-called American Alliance for Equal Rights.
Yes.
And it attacks a grant of about 20,000 being awarded to businesses that are owned at least by 51% black women.
Consistently, we've seen that 80 to 88, 89% of the money goes to all white, all male teams. So if we're going to bring a lawsuit now that says that we can't specifically fund black female founders, does that mean we need to retrospectively go and sue all of the people that have been funding all white, all male teams all of this time? Because I don't understand how one could happen without the other. So I do think that it should open up a floodgate, but I think that black females and everybody else, all females need to assemble, because one, we don't want this to be corrosive, i.e. First we get black females out and then we go for the rest of the female population, and then we go for let's just make it take it back to where it was. But also, I think that we should assemble and start to sue funds that haven't been diverse in any way, shape or form and have largely portfolios of all white males. Because if this is illegal, and it's found to be illegal through the Fearless Fund, then it must be illegal for all.
What happens if we get the environment right? Annalise Dodds from the UK's opposition party shared data that shows women hold the key to a stronger economy. Female-led businesses outperform those dominated by men. One story that supports that belief is Oleos, an app that connects individuals looking to offload uneaten food and other household items to nearby neighbours. Their impact has been recognised by the United Nations, who highlighted Oleo as a beacon for the world, and Vivatech, who awarded them Next European Unicorn. Hello.
Hi,
How are you?
Lovely to see you again.
And you.
Do come in.
Given the significance of the work that you're doing, and the light that has been shone upon it by organisations such as the UN, I would imagine that you have been able to raise money quite easily, and that is probably naive in itself. How much money have you raised so far?
Well, despite all the odds, we have managed to raise just over $50 million, but it has been grueling, soul-destroying, exhausting experience that I'm still honestly quite traumatized by.
Why has it been all of those things?
Oof, where do you start? It has been all of those things, not just because of the rejections that you get, but because it feels like I am speaking Japanese often. Like a lot of the investors, who are almost exclusively male, do not understand the problem that we are trying to solve. They're not excited about the problem that we're trying to solve, and they don't really kind of get the solution either. So we have certainly found that female investors and also investors of colour are people who understand the importance of the climate crisis, the urgency with which we need to solve it, and also the power that community-based solutions can bring to the table. And that is something that a typical investor that we're encountering often just can't get their heads around. This is something we could talk about at great length, so why don't we
Be comfortable.
Grab a seat, yes.
I think over the last couple of years in the technology industry, the outward discussion has been that there is progress being made with regards to more women coming into the industry, more diversity, perhaps more equity. But looking at this particular issue around funding, it seems that actually it's getting harder. You're a successful female founder in the industry. What's your perspective?
The reality is that the numbers have refused to budge. For years and years and years, female founders get generally 1% of all VC investment on a good year, or if you're looking at Europe, perhaps instead of the UK, we might get 2%. And there's been an awful lot of sort of hand-wringing in the industry about why this is. And there has been good progress made amongst the VC firms, bringing in female talent at a more junior level. And that's a fantastic first step, but it's still not getting us female founders any closer to the money, because the problem is that we then pitch to the more junior female investors. They love our business, they get excited. They then go on and pitch to their pale male and stale investment committee, and they suffer exactly the same rejection and knockback that we do. And so I am extremely clear that there is only one thing that will solve the female founding funding gap, and that is we need investment committees that are truly diverse, that have a 50% representation of women on them, and that will be transformative.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking, because you know, in preparation for this, we spoke to the Newton Venture Programme. They're trying to get more female VCs into the community. You look at statistics from the States, there are more female VCs, although the numbers are still fairly insignificant, but the funding gaps still get bigger. So are those female VCs empowered? Do they feel? No,
they're not. And the problem is that if you have one female and you have 9 men, you might look at that on paper and say you've got 10% female representation. But the reality is that that one woman is having to mask herself enormously and comply and fit in order to be able to survive. And actually she probably can only allow 10% of her femaleness to genuinely be demonstrated. So actually you've only got kind of 1% female in that scenario. And to solve it, we've got to move significantly beyond the token woman or the token person of colour. We have got to get as close to 50% as we can. That is when things will start to change. That is when things that often as a female founder to me are common sense, for example, that businesses should have to combine purpose with profit. These sorts of things at the moment are very controversial when you're in a predominantly male room. The minute you switch the mix and you have a much more even balance, again, that then is, that female perspective is represented and it's not seen as a point of contention.
Awareness of the challenges facing women has never been higher. The Barbie movie recently joined an exclusive club of films to gross more than $1 billion at the box office. And look, whilst that's great news, I fear that the film actually reflects some wider issues. Plenty of attention, but little in the way of new ideas or solutions. Despite the noise, we're headed in the wrong direction, and the lawsuit against the Fearless Fund clearly demonstrates that. an already rigged system is being made even more hostile. People who look like me already benefit from that rigged system, and it's getting easier. In difficult times and in difficult economic times, we return to safety, and that's what we know. In the case of funding businesses, that's companies dominated by men and markets we've already saturated. Unfortunately, it means less success stories like Tessa's. To give women an effective voice and bring about real change, there needs to be greater scrutiny. What do you think needs to change for more female founders to have access to the funds they need?
How do we get more women to just become wealthy in general? That's actually one of the big things. You know, we're talking 20 years or so, 15, 20 years, because there's just not as many women who are wealthy enough to make these high risk decisions that a lot of men have been able to do for a few hundred years.
Instead of being able to spend someone else's money, spend their own money.
Spend your own money. And I think as soon as it's someone else's money, think about it. If you were entrusted with, £1 million of someone else's money, you are going to guard that you are really going to be stressed about making the right decision.
I think that we can start to direct education, direct policy change, direct all of our resources to ensuring that those who hold the most power in this situation are incentivised to make change.
One of the most exhausting things about it is you're just faced by this wall of just male cynicism, of disbelief about the problem that you're trying to solve, disbelief around your solution. And I also feel that as female founders, we're not really given the license to think big or to be ambitious. And that's really frustrating.
What do you think is if there could be one or two actions that could actually make a tangible difference, what do you think those are?
There's just one thing for me. If we want to get more money to female founders, we have got to have diversity amongst the gatekeepers of capital. We need to have 50-50 investment committees.
What are your hopes? You're coming up to this funding round. I know it's not a perfect world, but what do you want to happen?
Firstly, to be seen for what we are, which is absolutely brilliant. And, we'd like to work with the absolute best people in the world, the best funds, the best partners, to build this consumer. We're not pivoting to B2B just because that's what investors want. We are a very core consumer product and our consumers love us. So we want to work with the best consumer fund in the world.
And gender played no part in your answer at all?
Literally none of it should matter anywhere. There are good businesses and good concepts and good things happening absolutely everywhere. It's just where, as a society, we shine a light. The same as where our media, come on, we all know our media is completely false, brainwashing us into various things. It's the same thing. We're shining a light on certain people and certain areas and just not shining a light on a lot of others. So,
thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Don't jump the gun, just call. Step by step, follow true. Step on my ones and my step on my ones and twos.